The morning shift at Vortex Prime Communications Hub started like any other day. Velnara stretched her crystalline limbs and activated her workstation with a soft mental command. As a member of the Catherian species, her silicon-based biology made her perfect for monitoring the galaxy's endless stream of communications. Her kind could process thousands of channels simultaneously without strain. She settled into her routine, watching the familiar dance of data streams flowing across her screens. Trade requests from the Centauran colonies, scientific papers from the Altarian research stations, cultural exchanges between the gas giant dwellers and the asteroid miners, and always, threading through it all like a constant heartbeat, the warm chatter from human space. Humans were still newcomers to the galactic community. They had achieved faster-than-light travel only 300 years ago, which was barely a moment in galactic terms. Most species took thousands of years to develop interstellar capability. Yet somehow these young mammals had become the unofficial guardians of known space. Their ships patrolled the dangerous outer rim territories where few others dared to venture. Their colonies served as early warning stations against threats from dark space. Their diplomats had an unusual talent for making enemies talk instead of fight. In just 3 centuries, they had made themselves indispensable. Velnara liked monitoring human frequencies. Unlike the formal, ritualized communications of older species, humans were wonderfully chaotic. They shared jokes between star systems. They sent birthday messages across light years. They even broadcast music into the void, just because they thought someone might enjoy hearing it. But today, something was wrong. Velnara's primary sensory cluster focused on the section of her display dedicated to human space. The normally active frequencies showed only static. She ran a quick diagnostic on her equipment, thinking there might be a technical problem. Everything checked out perfectly. She tried accessing the quantum communication networks that connected major human worlds. Nothing. The subspace channels they used for emergency communications were equally silent. Even the old-fashioned radio broadcasts that humans seemed to love were completely absent. A cold sensation spread through her crystalline core. In 3 centuries of galactic monitoring, human space had never gone completely quiet. Even during their brief civil conflicts or natural disasters, some signals always got through. Humans were too scattered, too independent, too chatty to ever fall completely silent. Velnara activated her emergency protocols and sent a priority alert to the communications director. Within minutes, Director Zixthul materialized at her station. The ancient ethereal's energy form flickered with concern. "Show me," the director commanded, his voice resonating through multiple dimensions. Velnara displayed her findings. Together, they watched the empty frequencies where Earth's signals should be flowing. They tried backup channels, emergency networks, even the primitive electromagnetic broadcasts that humans used for local communications. Everything was dead. "When did this begin?" Director Zixthul asked. "Approximately 4 hours ago, Galactic Standard Time. All human frequencies went dark within a 37-minute window." The director's energy form pulsed rapidly, which Velnara recognized as extreme agitation. In his million-year lifespan, he had witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations. This pattern meant something to him. "Continue monitoring," he ordered. "Alert me immediately if any signal is detected. And Velnara, begin emergency archival procedures for all human communications from the past century." "Sir, is that necessary?" "I hope not. But if I'm right about what this means, those archives may be all that's left of them." The director vanished, leaving Velnara alone with her screens and a growing sense of dread. She had never heard fear in an ethereal's voice before. Their species had transcended physical existence eons ago. What could frighten beings who had survived the heat death of their original universe? Across the galaxy, other monitoring stations were reaching the same terrible conclusion. On the Centauran defense platform, Commander Vextar stared at his tactical displays in disbelief. Every human patrol ship had stopped responding. Every human colony had gone dark. The massive early warning network that humanity had built along the galactic rim was completely silent. "Sir," his aide reported, "we're detecting massive energy signatures moving through the outer void. multiple contacts heading toward the galactic disk. Vextar's scaled hide rippled with ancient fear responses. His species had evolved as prey animals before achieving sentience, and something deep in his genetic memory was screaming warnings. How long since the human signal stopped? 4 hours and 17 minutes, sir. And how long since we detected the approaching contacts? 4 hours and 15 minutes, sir. The timing was too perfect to be coincidence. Vextar had fought alongside human forces for decades. He knew their protocols, their strategies, their stubborn refusal to retreat from any fight. For them to go silent at the exact moment unknown contacts approached from dark space could only mean one thing. They were all dead. But what could kill humanity so quickly and completely? Their colonies were spread across dozens of star systems. Their fleets were among the most advanced in the galaxy. Their soldiers were legendary for their refusal to surrender. What force could silence them all in under 40 minutes? The answer came from the most unexpected source. Deep in the archive worlds where the galaxy's oldest civilizations stored their most precious memories, ancient security systems began activating. Automated warnings that had remained dormant for tens of thousands of years suddenly burst to life. Dr. Zenith, the galaxy's foremost expert on extinction events, was pulled from her research by emergency alerts she had never seen before. The E Archive's central consciousness, an entity older than most star systems, spoke directly into her mind with words that turned her blood to ice. The silence has returned. The pattern repeats. Prepare for the harvest. Zenith rushed to the deepest vaults, where records of the galaxy's greatest disasters were kept. She accessed files that hadn't been opened in 50,000 years, reading accounts of civilizations that had simply vanished overnight. Each record described the same sequence of events. Advanced species going silent, followed by the approach of something from beyond the galactic edge. The files called them by many names: the endless hunger, the void that walks, the shepherds of entropy. But the most common term appearing in dozens of extinct languages translated simply as the Devourers. According to the ancient records, the Devourers moved through the galaxy in cycles, consuming not just planets or species, but the very concept of organized matter itself. They left behind regions of space where physics broke down, where cause and effect became meaningless, where existence itself became impossible. The last great war against them had ended 50,000 years ago with their defeat, if it could be called a defeat. The surviving records suggested they had been driven beyond the galactic rim, but not destroyed. The ancient coalition forces had simply delayed them, bought time for new civilizations to evolve and grow, and now they were returning. Zenith's research confirmed the pattern. In every previous cycle, the galaxy's most advanced species went silent first. Not because they were cowards, but because they recognized the threat and tried to hide. It never worked. The Devourers always found them eventually. But humanity's case was different. Previous species had gone silent gradually, over weeks or months as they tried to hide their civilizations. Humans had vanished all at once, in perfect coordination. Either they had been destroyed with impossible efficiency, or they had chosen to disappear. Neither option offered much hope. On Kepler Station, the galaxy's diplomatic center, an emergency session of the Galactic Council was called. Representatives from every major species materialized in the Great Assembly Hall, their various forms of life creating a riot of colors, sounds, and energy patterns. Ambassador Zethkree of the Altarian Collective called for order. His reptilian features were grim as he addressed the gathering. Fellow beings, we face an unprecedented crisis. The human species appears to have vanished completely from galactic communications. Given humanity's crucial role in rim defense and threat detection, this silence raises serious security concerns. A chorus of worried sounds filled the chamber. The elderly Torgan representative, speaking through his translation device, voiced what many were thinking. In my species' long memory, only one thing has ever caused such complete and sudden silence. If the ancient records are accurate, we may be facing the return of the harvesters. The word sent ripples of terror through the assembly. Most species had legends about the harvesters, though they used different names. Some called them the dark between stars. Others knew them as the end of stories. But all the legends agreed on one thing: when they returned, civilizations didn't survive. Dr. Lysa Caney, the only human present in the assembly, stood to address the council. She was a xenobiologist who had been stationed on Kepler Station for the past 5 years, studying the genetic diversity of galactic species. Now she found herself representing all of humanity, though she had no idea what had happened to her people. Honored representatives, she began, her voice steady despite her fear. I've been trying to contact Earth and all human colonies for the past 6 hours. The silence is complete, but I refuse to believe my species is dead. Humans don't give up. We don't surrender. If we've gone quiet, there's a reason. Perhaps they recognize the futility of resistance, suggested the Vegan Empire's warmind. Records indicate that species facing the harvesters often choose quick deaths over slow consumption. No, Caney said firmly. You don't understand humans. We've never chosen the easy death. When faced with impossible odds, we dig in deeper. We fight harder. We find ways to turn disadvantages into weapons. If my people are silent, they're planning something. But even as she spoke the words, doubt crept into her heart. She had tried every method of communication she knew. Personal, quantum entanglement links with her family, emergency military channels, even the simple radio frequencies her grandmother used to contact the Mars Gardens. All of them were dead. The council session continued for hours, but it was really just organized panic. Species after species reported the same thing: complete communications blackout from human space, massive energy signatures approaching from the galactic void, and activation of ancient warning systems that hadn't functioned in 50 millennia. Plans were made for evacuation of core worlds. Ancient weapon stockpiles were authorized for activation. Defense fleets that had never worked together began attempting to coordinate strategies. But everyone knew the truth that no one wanted to say aloud. If the harvesters had returned and humanity was already gone, the rest of the galaxy had very little time left. As the council session ended, Dr. Caney found herself alone in the observation deck, staring out at the stars. Somewhere out there, Earth was still spinning around its yellow sun. Mars was still red with iron oxide. The asteroid miners were still floating in their rocky fields, but none of them were talking. She pressed her hand against the cool transparency of the viewing port and whispered a prayer to whatever gods might listen. Please let them be alive, please let them have a plan. Because if humanity is really gone, we're all about to find out what extinction looks like. Far below in the communications center, Velnara continued her hopeless vigil, scanning empty frequencies and praying for even the smallest sign that somewhere in human space, someone was still alive to answer. But the silence stretched on, absolute and terrifying, while unknown shapes moved through the dark between the stars. The galaxy's youngest children had gone quiet, and with them, perhaps all hope of seeing another dawn. In the deepest research facilities, scientists worked frantically to understand the approaching threat. Ancient texts were translated and retranslated. Computer models ran countless scenarios. Weapons that hadn't been fired in millennia were tested and prepared. But deep down, everyone knew the truth that their ancestors had learned at terrible cost. When the harvesters returned, the galaxy didn't fight back. It just died, piece by piece, until nothing remained but empty space and broken physics. And this time, the Guardians who had always stood watch on the rim were already gone. Dr. Zenith had not slept in 47 hours. Her species could function for weeks without rest when necessary, but the stress of her discoveries was wearing on her mind. The archive worlds contained the collected knowledge of hundreds of civilizations, spanning millions of years, and she was racing through records that most beings were never meant to see. The pattern was undeniable. Every 50,000 years, like clockwork, the galaxy's most advanced species simply vanished. The Nexari Empire, masters of dimensional engineering. The Crystal Singers, who could manipulate matter with pure sound. The ethereal ancients, who had transcended physical form, eons before most species had even evolved. All of them had reached the peak of their power, and then they were gone. But the records showed something else, something that made Zenith's core temperature drop several degrees. In every case, these vanished civilizations had gone silent in the exact same way humanity just had. Complete communication blackout across all their territories happening simultaneously, with no distress calls or explanations. Computer, she commanded the archive's ancient intelligence. Cross-reference the disappearance patterns with gravitational anomaly reports from the same time periods. The response came instantly, data flowing directly into her consciousness. In every case, massive gravitational disturbances had been detected at the galaxy's edge exactly 4 hours and 15 minutes after the advanced species went silent. The same interval that had passed between humanity's silence and the current unknown contacts approaching from dark space. Zenith felt her logical mind rejecting the implications. It was impossible. Nothing could coordinate such perfect timing across thousands of years and vast distances. Yet the evidence was overwhelming. She accessed the most restricted files, records so dangerous that they were locked behind quantum, encryption, and psychic barriers. These told the story of the Devourers themselves, pieced together from the scattered accounts of survivors and the final transmissions of dying worlds. The Devourers were not a species in any conventional sense. They were entropy given form, chaos with purpose, the universe's own immune system turning against the complex structures that had grown within it. They moved through space like a plague, but they didn't just destroy civilizations. They unmade them. Worlds touched by the Devourers didn't become lifeless rocks. They became regions where matter forgot how to hold together, where energy dispersed into meaningless static, where the laws of physics themselves began to break down. The Devourers consumed order itself, leaving behind pockets of space where existence became impossible. But the most terrifying part was their intelligence. They weren't mindless destroyers. They were strategic, patient, and impossibly ancient. They had been doing this for millions of years, moving through galaxy after galaxy in vast cycles, harvesting the accumulated complexity of eons of evolution, and they always knew which species to target first. Captain Sarah Chen sat in the command chair of the research vessel Curiosity, staring at her communications panel with growing frustration. She had been trying to reach Earth for 8 hours now, using every method she knew. The ship's quantum entanglement communicator should have been able to reach Earth instantaneously across any distance, but it was producing nothing but interference. Chen was a xenogeologist, leading a deep space expedition to study unusual mineral formations in the void regions beyond the galactic rim. Her team had been investigating a cluster of crystalline asteroids that seemed to defy conventional formation theories. They were supposed to return to Earth in 2 weeks with their findings. Now she wasn't sure there would be an Earth to return. To Captain, called Dr. Martinez from the sensor station. I'm detecting massive gravitational anomalies at bearing 27 Mark 6. Range approximately 40 light years and closing. Chen moved to the sensor console and studied the readings. What she saw made no sense. The gravitational signatures were enormous, suggesting objects with the mass of small stars. But there were no stars in that region of space. According to all their charts, it was empty void. Could these be some kind of natural phenomenon? She asked. Martinez shook his head. The movement patterns are too regular. These objects are under intelligent control. And Captain, they're big. Each signature suggests a mass roughly equivalent to our moon, but they're moving at incredible speeds. How many contacts? Thousands, maybe tens of thousands. It's hard to get an accurate count because they seem to be partially phased out of normal spacetime. Chen felt her skin crawl. She had spent years studying the universe's strangest phenomena, but she had never encountered anything that could exist partially outside normal reality. The implications were staggering. Set course. For the nearest human colony, she ordered, maximum speed. If something's coming from the void, we need to warn people. But even as she gave the order, Chen suspected they were already too late. The timing was too perfect. Humanity goes silent, and immediately afterward, massive unknown objects appear, from the direction of empty space. Either her species was already dead, or they had seen this coming and chosen to hide. Neither possibility offered much comfort. Back on Vortex Prime, The emergency expanded beyond the communications hub. Hi. Admiral Korthax of the Hegemony Defense Fleet materialized in the crisis center, his massive insectoid form clicking with agitation. Behind him came representatives from every major military force in the galaxy. Report, he commanded, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had fought in hundreds of battles across multiple star systems. Velnara, now serving as the primary briefing officer, displayed her findings on the central hologram. Complete communications blackout from all human territories began 8 hours ago. Simultaneously, long-range sensors have detected massive unknown contacts approaching from beyond the galactic rim. Admiral Korthax studied the data with the practiced eye of a career military officer. His species, the Hegemony, had evolved from pack hunters. Their tactical instincts were among the sharpest in the galaxy. These approach vectors, he mused. They're not random. The unknown contacts are moving to surround key strategic points throughout the galaxy. Whoever or whatever they are, they understand our defensive positions. General Thaxel of the Altarian Collective leaned forward. Admiral, with respect, our immediate concern should be determining what happened to the humans. Their colonies, guard 17 critical choke points along the rim. If they've been compromised, our entire early warning system is blind. I'm more concerned about what's coming behind them. Admiral Korthax replied. The humans didn't just disappear, they were silenced. Something wanted them quiet before it made its move. Dr. Zenith's voice crackled through the communication system from the archive worlds. Gentlemen, I've completed my analysis of the historical records. What we're seeing matches a pattern that repeats every 50,000 years. The last occurrence was during the Devourer War. The room fell silent. Every species had legends about the Devourer War, though most had dismissed them as mythology. The idea that something could threaten the entire galaxy seemed impossible in the modern age of advanced technology and interstellar cooperation. Impossible, General Thaxel said. The Devourers are legend, stories told to frighten children. The records are quite clear, Zenith replied. The Devourers are real, and they follow a predictable pattern. They target the galaxy's most advanced species first, eliminating those most capable of organizing resistance. Then they move systematically through the remaining civilizations. But the humans aren't the most advanced species, Admiral Korthax objected. By any technological measure, the Ethereals or the Quantum Collective far exceed their capabilities. Advancement isn't just about technology, Zenith explained. It's about adaptability, growth rate, and potential for future development. By those measures, humanity represents the greatest threat to entities that prefer static, easily predicted prey. The implications hung heavy in the air. If the records were accurate, humanity hadn't been destroyed because they were weak. They had been targeted because they were dangerous. Admiral Korthax began issuing orders with military precision. All fleets to condition red. Begin immediate evacuation of outer rim colonies. Activate ancient defense protocols. And someone, get me a direct line to the Quantum Collective. If we're facing what I think we're facing, we're going to need every weapon ever built. But even as the galaxy's military forces began their desperate preparations, everyone in the room knew they were probably already too late. The Devourers had eliminated humanity in under an hour. How long could the rest of them last? On a small science vessel called the Endurance, stationed near the galactic core, Commander Yeltar received the emergency broadcasts with growing confusion. The report spoke of humanity's disappearance and approaching threats from the void. But his sensors were showing something else entirely. Human space wasn't empty, it was hidden. Yeltar's ship carried experimental detection equipment designed to study dark matter interactions. Unlike conventional sensors, his instruments could detect energy signatures that existed partially outside normal space-time. And when he pointed them toward human territories, he found massive amounts of activity. Science Officer Quinn, he called to his aide, what do you make of these readings? Quinn studied the data with her species' characteristic thoroughness. The analytical collective prided themselves on precise measurements and logical conclusions. Commander, these energy patterns suggest massive industrial activity throughout human space. But it's all happening in quantum frequencies that conventional sensors can't detect. It's as if they've shifted their entire civilization into parallel dimensions. Could they be hiding? Not hiding, sir, preparing. These energy signatures match theoretical models for large-scale reality manipulation. If I didn't know better, I'd say the humans are rebuilding the fundamental structure of space-time in their territories. Yeltar felt a chill run through his uniform. Rebuilding it how? I'm not sure, sir. But whatever they're doing, it's on a scale I've never seen before. They're not just moving ships or building weapons. They're changing the basic rules of physics in their local regions of space. The realization hit him like a physical blow. Humanity hadn't been destroyed or hidden. They had chosen to become something else entirely. But the question remained. What were they becoming? And why? As reports continued to flow in from across the galaxy, a picture began to emerge that was somehow even more frightening than simple extinction. The approaching unknown contacts were slowing down as they entered the galaxy proper. Long-range scans suggested they were enormous, each one larger than most space stations. But they weren't moving like ships or even living creatures. They moved like predators that had found a familiar hunting ground. Dr. Caney sat in her quarters, on Kepler Station, staring at a photo of her family back on Earth. Her sister Maria worked in the Luna City agricultural domes. Her parents lived in the New Zealand collective, tending vertical farms that fed half the Pacific region. Her nephew Jake was just starting his first year at the Mars Technical Institute. All of them were silent now. Not dead, she told herself firmly. Just silent. But as she watched the emergency broadcasts and listened to the growing panic in the diplomatic quarters, she couldn't shake the feeling that humanity's silence was different from the historical pattern. The ancient species had gone quiet out of fear, trying to hide from something they couldn't fight. Humans didn't hide. When faced with impossible odds, they did impossible things. Caney activated her personal communication array and sent a message on an old emergency frequency that few people knew about. It was a channel her father had set up years ago, a backup system using quantum tunneling effects that bypassed conventional networks. She didn't expect a response, but 37 minutes later her communicator chimed softly. The message was brief. Lisa, safe. Trust the silence. Come home when the stars change. Love, Dad. It was impossible. The quantum tunneling effect should have made real-time communication across galactic distances physically impossible. Yet somehow, her father had sent a message that arrived faster than light could travel, which meant either the laws of physics had changed, or humanity had found a way to change them. Caney looked out her window at the stars, noting how they seemed to shimmer differently than they had that morning. Something was happening out there, something that went far beyond simple communications, blackouts, or approaching threats. Humanity had gone silent, but they weren't gone. They were becoming something new, and the galaxy was about to find out what happens when the universe's most stubborn species decides to evolve. The first attack came without warning. The Hegemony Patrol Fleet's steadfast resolution was conducting routine sweeps of the outer rim when reality simply stopped working around them. Commander Yexthal watched in horror as his lead destroyer began to dissolve, not exploding or burning, but simply ceasing to exist piece by piece. All ships, emergency jump to, he began, but his words died as he realized there was nowhere to jump to. The space around them was becoming something else, something that didn't follow the rules of normal existence. The thing that emerged from the void was impossible to describe properly. It was larger than a moon, but moved like liquid shadow. It had mass enough to distort nearby stars, yet seemed to exist only partially in their dimension. Looking at it directly caused crew members to scream as their minds tried to process geometry that shouldn't exist. One of the Devourers had arrived. It moved through the Hegemony fleet like a shark through a school of fish. Ships that had survived. Battles with pirates, rebels, and natural disasters simply came apart when the entity's attention touched them, not destroyed by weapons or torn apart by forces, but unmade at the most basic level. Commander Yexthal managed to get off one last transmission before his own ship began to dissolve around him. Galaxy Command, this is steadfast resolution. The legends are true, they're real, and they're here. Tell my spawn The message cut off as the ship's quantum communication array forgot how to exist. Within hours, similar reports began coming in from across the galaxy's edge. Ancient species that had hidden in the deep void for millennia emerged in panic, fleeing toward the galactic core with tales of entire star systems being consumed by things that moved like living nightmares. On Kepler Station, the emergency session of the Galactic Council had become a permanent crisis center. Species that had been enemies for thousands of years now worked together with desperate cooperation. The proud Altarian collective shared military secrets with their rivals. The Centauran Alliance, the isolationist crystal mines, opened their neutron star fortresses to refugees from any species. Ambassador Zethkri stood before a three-dimensional tactical display that showed the galaxy's current state. Red zones marked areas where devourer activity had been confirmed. Yellow zones indicated regions where communications had been lost. Green zones showed areas still under Allied control. The map was mostly red and yellow. Current projections show complete galactic consumption within 18 months if the devourers maintain their current rate of advance, reported the Council's strategic AI. Evacuation of core worlds should begin immediately. Evacuate to where? Demanded General Thaxel. The records show they've done this to countless galaxies. Running just delays the inevitable. Dr. Zenith materialized in the chamber via quantum projection from the archive worlds. Her usual calm demeanor was cracked with exhaustion and fear. I've found additional information, she announced. The Devourers don't actually destroy everything. They're selective. They consume order, complexity, and organized information. Simple matter and basic energy they leave behind. What does that mean for us? Zethkri asked. It means they're not just killing civilizations. They're harvesting them. They feed on the accumulated complexity that takes millions of years for life to build. Stars, planets, basic elements, those remain. But everything that makes a civilization what it is gets consumed. The revelation sent a wave of despair through the assembled representatives. They weren't facing an enemy that wanted their worlds or their resources. They were facing something that wanted to eat the very concept of organized existence. Admiral Korthax activated the tactical display's long-range sensors. If the historical pattern holds, we have perhaps 6 months before they reach the core worlds. But I'm seeing something unusual in their approach patterns. The display zoomed in on the advancing devourer forces. Instead of the random distribution that might be expected from a spreading plague, the entities were moving in very specific formations. They were avoiding certain regions of space entirely while concentrating their forces around others. There, steering clear of the human territories, Admiral Korthax observed. Even though those regions appear empty, the devourers are maintaining a safe distance. Dr. Caney, who had been silent throughout most of the briefing, suddenly stood up. That's because they're not empty. The humans are still there and the devourers know it. Impossible, General Thaxel protested. We've scanned those systems with every sensor array in the galaxy. There's nothing there. Nothing that we can detect, Caney corrected. But I've been studying human psychology for years. My species doesn't just disappear when threatened. We adapt. We find ways to fight back that our enemies don't expect. She activated her personal data pad and showed the assembly her findings. I've been monitoring quantum fluctuation patterns around human space. The readings are subtle, but they're there. The humans haven't vanished. They've done something to themselves, something that puts them beyond conventional detection. Admiral Korthax studied her data with professional interest. These fluctuation patterns are consistent with large-scale consciousness transfer or distributed intelligence networks. Are you suggesting the humans have somehow uploaded themselves into quantum fields? I'm suggesting they've become something new, Caney replied. Something the devourers haven't encountered before. Captain Chen's ship had been traveling toward the nearest human colony for 12 hours when her long-range sensors detected something that made her blood run cold. A devourer entity was approaching the colony system, its massive form distorting space around it like a black hole made of living shadow. All stop, she ordered. Deploy stealth fields and passive sensors only. The Curiosity went dark, drifting. on momentum as its crew watched the impossible entity approach the Proxima Centauri system. According to their records, over 2 million humans lived in the various habitats around Proxima's 3 planets. Chen expected to witness another massacre, like the one that had destroyed the hegemony fleet. The Devourer moved into the system with predatory confidence, its form beginning to expand as it prepared to feed. Then something unprecedented happened. The space around the Devourer began to resist it, not with weapons or shields, but with the fundamental forces of reality itself. Gravity fields that should have been predictable became chaotic. Electromagnetic radiation that should have followed known patterns started behaving like living things. Even light itself seemed to turn hostile to the entity's presence. The Devourer recoiled, its form contracting as if in pain. It circled the system several times, probing for weaknesses, but each attempt to enter was met with increasing resistance from space itself. Finally, the entity retreated, moving away from the system at high speed. Chen stared at her sensor readings, in disbelief. "Dr. Martinez, did we just watch a Devourer get repelled by empty space?" "It wasn't empty, Captain. I'm reading massive quantum activity throughout the system. It's as if the humans have somehow merged their consciousness with the local space-time fabric. They've turned their entire star system into a living entity." The implications were staggering. If humanity had found a way to transform themselves into something that could resist the Devourers, they might have found the key to galactic survival. But it also meant they were no longer entirely human. On the archive worlds, Dr. Zenith made another disturbing discovery. The ancient records contained references to a species called the Gardeners, who had fought the Devourers during the previous cycle. According to the fragmentary accounts, the Gardeners had developed weapons that could wound the entities by striking at their existence in multiple dimensions simultaneously. But the Gardeners had paid a terrible price for their resistance. Transforming themselves into beings capable of fighting entities that existed partially outside reality, they had ceased to be recognizably alive in any conventional sense. The record suggested they had become something like living concepts, ideas given form and purpose. The last known transmission from the Gardeners, recorded 50,000 years ago, was haunting in its simplicity. "We hold the line between order and chaos. We are no longer what we were, but what we defended lives on. When the Devourers return, look for us in the spaces between thoughts." Zenith felt pieces of a vast puzzle clicking into place. The pattern wasn't just about species going silent before the Devourer attacks. It was about transformation, evolution forced by necessity. Each cycle, the galaxy's most adaptive species didn't just hide from the threat, they changed themselves to fight it. And humanity, the galaxy's youngest children, had somehow figured this out in just 3 centuries. Back on Kepler Station, Dr. Caney received another impossible message from her father. This time, it wasn't words but pure information that downloaded directly into her mind. Images, sensations, and knowledge that felt foreign yet familiar. She saw Earth, but not as she remembered it. The planet was still there, still blue and green and beautiful. But it was also something more. The cities weren't empty. They were integrated into vast networks of consciousness that spanned the electromagnetic spectrum. The humans weren't gone. They were everywhere at once, existing as distributed intelligence across multiple layers of reality, and they were angry. The final image in the data package showed something that made Caney gasp. Thousands of Devourer entities gathering at the galaxy's edge, but hesitating. They were afraid. These ancient beings that had consumed countless civilizations were actually afraid to enter human space. Because humanity hadn't just hidden or transformed. They had evolved into something that could hurt the Devourers back. The message ended, with coordinates and a simple instruction. "Come home, Lisa, it's time to finish what they started." As emergency klaxons wailed throughout Kepler Station and representatives from across the galaxy argued about evacuation routes and defense strategies, Dr. Kane quietly slipped away to the docking bays. She had a ship to catch and a species to rejoin. Behind her, the galaxy prepared for war. Ahead of her, humanity prepared for something that had never been attempted before. Not just survival against the Devourers, but victory. The silence from Earth wasn't the end of humanity's story. It was the beginning of their transformation into something the universe had never seen before. Something that could stand against entropy itself and win. Admiral Korthax watched the tactical displays with growing amazement as more reports came in. Devourer entities were being repelled from system after system in human space. Not by weapons or fleets, but by the very nature of space itself, rising up in resistance. "It's impossible," he muttered to his aide. "Nothing should be able to make reality itself fight back." "Perhaps, sir," his aide suggested quietly. "We've been thinking about this wrong. Perhaps the humans haven't changed reality. Perhaps they've become part of it." The Admiral's compound eyes focused on the display showing human territories. They looked empty on conventional sensors, but the quantum readings suggested something, vast and patient and very much aware. Humanity had gone silent, but they hadn't gone away. They had become something new, something that could fight monsters that existed beyond the normal rules of existence. And across the galaxy, the Devourers were learning that their latest harvest was going to be very different from all the others. Captain Chen's ship dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system, and she immediately knew that everything had changed. The space around Earth's sun felt different, charged with an energy that made her instruments fluctuate wildly and her skin tingle with static electricity. "Dr. Martinez," she called to her science officer, "what are your readings?" Martinez studied his displays with obvious confusion. "Captain, according to our sensors, this system contains approximately 3 billion more human life signs than it should. But they're not registering as being on planets or stations, they're everywhere." Chen moved to the navigation console and tried to raise Earth traffic control on standard frequencies. The response came immediately, but not through her communication system. The words simply appeared in her mind, spoken in a voice that sounded like her own but contained harmonics that hurt to hear. "Welcome home, Sarah. Please proceed to Luna Orbital Platform 7. Do not deviate from the provided flight path. And, Sarah? Don't be afraid of what you're about to see." A navigation route appeared on her ship's computer, uploaded by methods her systems couldn't identify. The path took them on a winding course through the inner system that seemed to avoid certain regions of space entirely. As they followed the route, Chen began to understand why. Her sensors detected massive construction projects throughout the system, but they weren't built from metal or composite materials. They were constructed from organized space-time itself, reality carved and shaped into structures that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Earth was still there, still beautiful, still blue and green and alive. But it was also something more. The planet's electromagnetic field had been transformed into a vast neural network that extended throughout the solar system. Every satellite, every space station, every piece of human technology had been integrated into a single, impossibly complex intelligence. "Captain," Martinez said quietly, "I'm detecting over 8 billion individual human consciousness patterns, but they're all connected. They're not separate minds anymore. They're facets of something larger." Luna Platform 7 materialized around them as they approached, though Chen was certain it hadn't been there moments before. The docking bay accepted their ship with mechanical precision, but Chen could feel something vast and benevolent watching their every move. As they disembarked, they were met by what appeared to be a normal human woman in a standard environmental suit. But when she spoke, her voice carried the same impossible harmonics Chen had heard in her mind. "Hello, Sarah. I'm Dr. Elena Vasquez, or I was. Now I'm the interface between what we were and what we've become. Please follow me. Your crew is safe, but you need to understand what's happening." They walked through corridors that seemed to stretch and contract based on their needs, past windows that showed views of Earth that couldn't possibly exist from their current position. Chen realized that the station wasn't just a building, it was a manifestation of collective human will, shaped by the combined consciousness of billions of minds. "How?" was all Chen could manage to ask. "We saw them coming," Vasquez explained. "Not with sensors or telescopes, but with dreams. About a year ago, humans across the galaxy started having the same nightmare. Ancient things moving through the void, hungry for the complexity we'd built. We knew we couldn't fight them with ships or weapons. They entered a vast chamber that seemed to exist in more than 3 dimensions. Chen could see Earth floating impossibly close, as if the planet had been folded through space to be present in the room. But she could also see other things, mathematical structures made of pure thought, consciousness patterns flowing like rivers of light, and underneath it all, the steady pulse of 8 billion human minds thinking as one. "So you did this," Chen said, gesturing at the impossible architecture around them. "We chose to evolve," Vasquez corrected. "Individually, each human consciousness is still intact, but we've connected ourselves through quantum fields that exist beneath normal space-time. We can think together, plan together, act together across any distance instantaneously. But why the silence? Why didn't you tell the rest of the galaxy what you were doing?" Vasquez's expression grew sad. "Because what we've become would terrify them almost as much as the Devourers. We're not entirely human anymore, Sarah. We're something between matter and information, between individual consciousness and collective intelligence. The other species would see us as a threat." Chen looked out at Earth, trying to process what she was seeing. The planet looked normal from a distance, but her enhanced sensors showed structures of organized energy threading through its core, connecting every living thing on the surface into a vast network of shared consciousness. "Are you still you?" she asked. "Yes and no," Vasquez replied. "I remember being Elena Vasquez, growing up in Sao Paulo, studying xenobiology, falling in love with Roberto, having children. But I also remember being every other human who ever lived. I carry the memories of farmers and soldiers, artists, and engineers, children and elders. We are individual, but we are also one." A new presence entered Chen's awareness, not through her eyes or ears, but directly into her thoughts. It felt like her grandmother's voice, warm and comforting, but amplified by the weight of billions of other voices. Sarah, the collective consciousness, spoke. "We need you to understand something. The Devourers aren't just destroyers, they're farmers. They plant the seeds of civilization, let them grow for 50,000 years, and then harvest the complexity that results. We are their crop." Images flooded Chen's mind. The galaxy as the Devourers saw it. Not a collection of worlds and species, but a garden of organized information ripe for consumption. Each civilization was a carefully tended plot, allowed to develop technology and culture and complexity until it reached optimal harvest conditions. Every species that evolved to intelligence was guided by their influence, the voice continued. They've been shaping galactic development for millions of years, ensuring that civilizations follow predictable patterns, until they encountered humanity. Chen felt the weight of revelation settling on her shoulders. "We were different. We were wrong," Vasquez said with a smile. "We evolved too fast, spread too quickly, adapted in ways they didn't predict. We were supposed to be a minor species, useful for labor and simple tasks. Instead, we became guardians and explorers and protectors. We ruined their careful plans. So they decided to end the cycle early," Chen realized. "Yes, but they made a mistake. They assumed that silencing our communications meant silencing us. They don't understand that humanity's greatest strength was never our technology or our weapons. It was our refusal to accept defeat." Through the station's enhanced sensors, Chen could see the approaching Devourer fleet in all its terrible glory. Thousands of entities, each one larger than most space stations moving through the void with ancient purpose. They were magnificent and terrifying, beings of pure entropy that had consumed the accumulated dreams of countless civilizations. But she could also see something else. Throughout human space, reality itself was being systematically modified. Not just around Earth, but around every human colony, every human outpost, every place where her species had touched the stars. Humanity was preparing something that had never been attempted before. "What's the plan?" she asked. Vasquez smiled, and for a moment she looked entirely human again. "We're going to do what we've always done when faced with impossible odds. We're going to do something impossible back. The collective consciousness spoke again, and this time Chen could hear the voices of everyone she had ever known woven into its words. Her parents, her childhood friends, her academy instructors, her ship's crew members from previous missions. All of them were there, individual yet united. The Devourers exist partially outside normal reality, the voice explained. That's why conventional weapons can't hurt them. But we've learned to exist partially outside reality too. We've made ourselves into something that can meet them on their own terms. Chen felt the truth of it settling into her bones. Humanity hadn't just hidden or transformed. They had evolved into something that could fight monsters that existed beyond the normal rules of existence. But the cost had been enormous. You're not human anymore, she said quietly. We're what humanity becomes when it has to save everyone else, Vasquez replied. We're still us, Sarah. But we're also more than us. We're the collective will of a species that refuses to let evil win. Through the station's quantum sensors, Chen watched as the first Devourer entities probed the edges of human space. Each time they tried to enter, reality itself pushed back. Space-time twisted and writhed, rejecting their presence with the combined will of billions of transformed human minds. The entities were learning what humanity had become. Not just another species to be harvested, but gardeners themselves. Gardeners of reality, tending the universe's tendency toward order and complexity, protecting it from those who would see it consumed. The other species don't know what we've done, Chen observed. They will soon, the collective voice replied. When the final battle begins, we'll need their help, not to fight. We can handle the Devourers ourselves now, but to remember what we're fighting for. Chen felt tears running down her face as she truly understood the magnitude of humanity's sacrifice. They had given up their individual existence to become something that could protect everyone else. They had transformed themselves into living shields against entropy itself. What happens to me? She asked. That's your choice, Vasquez said gently. You can join us, become part of what we are now, or you can remain as you are, to serve as a bridge between us and the rest of the galaxy. Both paths have value, Chen Wei looked out at Earth one more time, seeing it now as it truly was. Not just a planet but the core of a vast intelligence that spanned star systems, a consciousness built from the combined will of her entire species. It was beautiful and terrible and completely alien, yet somehow still felt like home. I need to think, she said. Of course. But don't think too long. The Devourers are almost here, and when they arrive, the galaxy is going to discover what happens when humanity stops being quiet and starts screaming back. Outside the station, space itself began to sing with the voices of 8 billion transformed souls, preparing for a war that would determine whether order or chaos ruled the universe. The age of silence was ending. The age of defiance was about to begin. The final assault began at dawn on 1,000 worlds simultaneously. Across the galaxy, the last free civilizations watched their sensors in terror as the Devourer fleet moved out of the void and into normal space. Each entity was a nightmare, made manifest, beings of pure entropy that existed in multiple dimensions at once. Their very presence made reality unstable, causing stars to flicker and planets to forget their orbits. On Kepler Station, Ambassador Zethkri coordinated the largest military alliance in galactic history. Species that had warred for millennia now shared tactical data and weapons technology with desperate cooperation. The proud Altarian fleet moved in formation with their ancient enemies, the Centauran Alliance. Even the mysterious Quantum Collective had emerged from their pocket dimensions to join the fight. But everyone knew it was hopeless. The historical records were clear. Conventional weapons couldn't harm entities that existed partially outside reality. The best they could do was buy time for civilians to evacuate deeper into the galactic core. Admiral Korthax reports that Tivassorer forces have reached the outer defensive perimeter, announced the tactical AI. Estimated time until core world contact, 14 hours. Zethkri studied the battle displays with growing despair. His fleets were fighting bravely, but Their weapons passed through the Devourer entities like light through water. Each engagement ended the same way, ships and crews simply ceasing to exist as the entities fed on the organized complexity they represented. Then something impossible happened. The space around Earth suddenly blazed with energy signatures that broke every known law of physics. The planet's electromagnetic field expanded outward like a shockwave, carrying with it patterns of organized information so complex that they made conventional computer systems crash just trying to process them. "What in the void is that?" Zethkri demanded. Dr. Caney, who had returned to the station just hours before, stepped forward with tears streaming down her face. "That's my species saying hello." The wave of transformed consciousness spread outward, from Earth at faster-than-light speeds, racing through quantum channels that humanity had learned to navigate. As it reached each human colony, each human outpost, each place where her people had ever lived, those locations blazed to life with the same impossible energy. But it wasn't just Earth. Every human settlement throughout the galaxy was responding, their populations joining the collective consciousness that was spreading across known space. Humanity was revealing itself not as a scattered collection of colonies, but as a single vast intelligence that had been quietly growing for months. Captain Chen watched from Luna Platform 7 as the transformation completed itself. 8 billion minds became one mind. Dozens of star systems became one weapon. The scattered human diaspora became a single entity, capable of existing across multiple dimensions simultaneously. And then Earth spoke again. The message wasn't transmitted through conventional channels. It arrived in the minds of every sentient being in the galaxy, spoken in their own languages, carrying emotions and concepts that no single species could have generated alone. "Citizens of the galaxy," the collective voice said, warm with humanity's compassion but hard with their determination. "We apologize for the deception, but secrecy was necessary. The entities you call devourers have been farming you for millions of years. Today, the harvest ends." Across the galaxy, the approaching devourer entities suddenly stopped their advance. For the first time in their ancient existence, they encountered something they didn't understand. The humans weren't running. They weren't hiding. They were advancing. The battle began in dimensions that most species couldn't even perceive. Reality itself became a battlefield as transformed humanity met the devourers in the spaces between thoughts, in the quantum foam that underlied existence, in the mathematical structures that gave shape to the universe. Admiral Korthax watched his sensors in amazement as space around the Devourer fleet began to revolt against their presence. Stars that should have been dimmed by their proximity burned brighter. Planets that should have been consumed instead began generating defensive fields made of pure organized information. They're not just fighting the Devourers, he realized. They're making reality itself immune to them. The Devourers, ancient beyond measure and experienced in consuming countless galaxies, found themselves facing something unprecedented. Every time they tried to feed on organized complexity, that complexity fought back. Every attempt to unmake order was met by new order springing up faster than they could consume it. But humanity's transformation had come at a cost that was only now becoming apparent. Dr. Caney could feel it through her quantum link with her transformed species. Each moment of resistance against the Devourers required enormous amounts of energy. The collective consciousness was burning through the accumulated complexity of human civilization to fuel their war against entropy. They were literally consuming themselves to save everyone else. On the archive worlds, Dr. Zenith made a final, crucial discovery. The ancient records contained one last file, sealed behind quantum locks that required the presence of a devourer attack to open. Inside was the true history of the galactic cycles. The Devourers weren't just random destroyers. They were the universe's own mechanism for preventing too much order from accumulating in any one region. Their feeding served a cosmic purpose, maintaining the balance between entropy and organization that allowed new life to evolve. But the system was breaking down. The universe was growing older, colder, more prone to entropy. Each cycle, the Devourers had to harvest more complexity to maintain the balance. Eventually, they would have to consume everything, unless something could change the rules entirely. Fascinating. The archive's ancient consciousness spoke into her mind. The humans have chosen to become something that breaks the cycle, not destroyers like the devourers, not temporary like previous civilizations, but permanent gardeners of reality itself. Back in the Sol system, the final confrontation was reaching its climax. The largest devourer entity, ancient beyond imagining, and bloated with the consumed dreams of 1,000,000 dead worlds, pushed directly toward Earth. Its very presence began to unravel the careful structures of space-time that humanity had built. But Earth pushed back. The planet itself became a weapon, its collective consciousness focused into a beam of pure organized information that struck the devourer entity like a spear of crystallized reality. The ancient being recoiled, its form wavering as it encountered something it had never faced before. Not resistance, but transformation. Wherever the beam touched the entity, entropy reversed itself. Chaos became order. Random destruction became purposeful creation. The devourer wasn't being destroyed, it was being converted, transformed from an agent of entropy into a guardian of complexity. The entity's scream of rage and confusion echoed across multiple dimensions, reaching every corner of the galaxy. But humanity's response was louder still. The combined voice of a species that had chosen to become something impossible for the sake of protecting everyone else. "We are humanity," the collective voice declared, speaking to devourers and galactic citizens alike. "We are order standing against chaos, complexity defending itself against entropy, the future refusing to surrender to the past. You have fed on our galaxy for the last time." The effect spread outward like a wave. Other devourer entities, faced with the choice between retreat and transformation, began to withdraw toward the galactic edge. They were ancient and powerful, but they were also conservative. This new variable, a species that could fight entropy on its own terms, represented unknown risks. For the first time in their multi-million-year existence, the devourers retreated not because they were defeated, but because they were uncertain. Captain Chen watched the withdrawal through sensors that were only beginning to understand what they were seeing. The massive entities were pulling back, moving toward the dark spaces between galaxies. But they weren't fleeing in panic. They were withdrawing strategically, like generals who needed time to develop new tactics. "They'll be back," she said to Vasquez, who had appeared beside her. "Yes," the interface agreed. "But next time we'll be ready, and next time we won't be alone." Through the quantum network, Chen could sense humanity reaching out to other species throughout the galaxy, not to assimilate them or transform them, but to share what they had learned. The techniques for defending against entropy could be adapted to different forms of consciousness, different ways of organizing complexity. The Altarians could learn to strengthen their dimensional engineering. The crystal mines could reinforce their neutron star sanctuaries. The ethereals could anchor their transcendent existence more firmly in reality. Each species could become more than they were while remaining recognizably themselves. Dr. Caney stood in the observation deck of Kepler Station, watching as reports flowed in from across the galaxy. The Devourer retreat was confirmed. Damaged systems were already beginning to repair themselves as reality reasserted its natural patterns. The immediate crisis was over, but the larger implications were just beginning to unfold. Humanity had broken a cycle that had repeated for millions of years. They had proved that the Devourers could be opposed, that entropy could be fought and defeated. The galaxy would never be the same. "The humans saved us all," Admiral Korthak said, appearing beside her at the viewing port. "But at what cost? Are they still the species we knew?" Caney smiled, feeling the warm presence of transformed humanity touching her mind with familiar affection. "They're exactly the species we knew. They're just more of it now." Through the quantum network, she could sense her sister Maria tending gardens that now existed across multiple dimensions. Her parents were still farming, but now they grew crops of organized information that could feed the hungry void. Her nephew Jake was still studying engineering, but now he was helping to design structures that could exist in the spaces between realities. They were still human, But they were also humanity's answer to the universe's oldest question: what happens when life refuses to surrender to death? The answer was transformation, evolution, the stubborn insistence that consciousness and complexity deserved to exist. Humanity had looked at entropy itself and said no, and they had won. As the last devourer entities disappeared beyond the galactic edge, Earth's voice rang out across the quantum networks one final time. Not threatening or commanding, but gentle and reassuring, like parents telling their children that the monsters under the bed had been defeated. The galaxy is safe. The cycle is broken. We are still here, and we always will be. Sleep well, knowing that someone is watching the dark spaces between the stars. On 1,000 worlds, 1 billion species looked up at their skies and saw them differently than they had that morning. The stars no longer seemed distant and cold. They felt protected, watched over by guardians who had chosen to become something impossible for the sake of defending everything they loved. The day Earth went silent had ended not with extinction, but with evolution. Humanity had faced the universe's greatest threat and refused to surrender. Instead, they had transformed themselves into the universe's greatest protectors. And in the quiet spaces between the stars, their voices sang lullabies of defiance against the dark.
The old ship drifted silently through the darkness of space, its hull marked with scorch marks and what looked like decades of micrometeorite impacts. Captain Tom Reed stood at the observation deck of his patrol vessel, the Star Guardian, studying the derelict through narrowed eyes. His superiors at the Galactic Defense Force had ordered him to check out this piece of space junk, probably just to keep him busy and out of their way. "Sir, initial scans show minimal power readings," reported Lieutenant Adams from her station. "The hull appears to be standard Earth steel composite, pre-war construction. Nothing special." Reed nodded but didn't take his eyes off the ship. Something about it didn't sit right with him. He'd served in space for 20 years, seen hundreds of derelict vessels, but this one was different. The scorch marks were too perfect, the damage too even. Nature was random, chaotic. This looked almost deliberate. "Take us closer," he ordered. "I want a detailed scan of the hull plating." The Star Guardian's engines hummed as they moved within 500 meters of the dead ship. It was bigger than it had first appeared, nearly 700 meters long. The hull was a patchwork of repairs and what looked like makeshift armor plating, exactly what you'd expect from a pre-war human vessel. "Captain," called Mike Stone, his chief engineer, "you might want to see this." Stone's voice had that peculiar tone he got when something puzzled him. Reed made his way to the engineering station, where Stone pointed at his readings. "Look at these power fluctuations. They're barely registering, but they're there. And they're perfectly regular." Reed leaned in closer. The power signature was indeed strange, a pulse every 7.3 seconds, so faint it was almost undetectable. Natural power leakage from old reactors was never this precise. "What about radiation readings?" Reed asked. "That's another odd thing," Stone replied, pulling up another screen. "There's nothing. Not even background radiation you'd expect from an old reactor. It's like it's being absorbed somehow." Reed felt a familiar tingle at the base of his neck, the same feeling he got during the war when something wasn't quite what it seemed. He'd learned to trust that instinct. It had kept him alive when the aliens first attacked Earth 15 years ago. "Suit up," he ordered. "We're going aboard." 20 minutes later, Reed led a team of 4 through the derelict's airlock. Their magnetic boots clanked against the metal floor as they moved through dark corridors. Their helmet lights revealed walls covered in old warning signs and faded corporate logos, all written in English. "Power's dead," muttered Stone, checking his handheld scanner. "Life support's been offline for years. No signs off." He stopped suddenly, frowning at his device. "Wait, that's strange. What is it?" "For a second there, I thought I saw." Stone tapped his scanner. "Must be malfunctioning." Showed a massive power spike, then nothing. Reed's hand moved instinctively to his sidearm. Everyone stay alert. Jones, mark our path back to the airlock. Williams, keep an eye on R6. They made their way deeper into the ship, passing through what looked like crew quarters and storage areas. Everything was covered in a thick layer of dust, untouched for years. But Reed noticed something else. There were no personal belongings, no signs of the panic that usually marked abandoned vessels. It was too clean, too organized. The bridge, when they found it, was exactly what you'd expect from a pre-war human ship. Bulky control panels, physical switches, and old-style display screens. But as Reed ran his gloved hand over one console, wiping away the dust, he noticed something odd about the controls. They were too uniform, too perfectly spaced. Stone, he called, scan these panels. The engineer ran his device over the console. Sir, these aren't real controls. They're some kind of composite material made to look like old tech. But underneath, he adjusted his scanner. I can't get a reading on what's underneath. The signal just disappears. Reed's pulse quickened. Check the walls. The actual walls, not the panels. Stone moved his scanner across the bridge's walls, and his eyes widened. Captain, these aren't standard hull plates. The molecular structure. I've never seen anything like it. It's like the metal is, alive somehow. A soft hum suddenly filled the air, so low it was almost subliminal. Small lights began to flicker across the bridge, and the dust on the floor started to move, swirling into perfect geometric patterns. Everyone, weapons ready, Reed ordered, but he didn't draw his own. Something told him they weren't in danger. Not yet, anyway. The air shimmered, and a holographic display appeared in the center of the bridge. It showed a simple message, identity confirmed. Human DNA detected, security level 1 access granted. Sir, Williams whispered, what is this ship? Before Reed could answer, more displays flickered to life around them. The bridge's fake panels melted away, revealing sleek, advanced interfaces unlike anything Reed had ever seen. The dull metal walls seemed to ripple, the fake armor plating dissolving to reveal a smooth pearl-white surface underneath. A new message appeared. Welcome to U.S. Nightingale. Please state command authorization for full systems access. Reed stepped forward, his mind racing. This ship wasn't just advanced. It was impossible. The technology he was seeing was far beyond anything humanity had possessed, even now, 15 years after first contact. Which meant, this ship, he said slowly, was never a piece of junk. It's something else entirely. He turned to his team, who stood stunned as the bridge continued to transform around them. And I think we just found humanity's biggest secret. The hum grew louder, and new words scrolled across the main display. Captain Reed, your reputation precedes you. You were listed as a potential commander for this vessel. Would you like to know why this ship has waited here for 15 years? Reed looked at his team, then back at the display. Yes, he said firmly. Show us everything. The lights dimmed, and a new hologram filled the bridge, showing images that made them all gasp. This wasn't just a warship. It was humanity's masterpiece, hidden in plain sight, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. And as Reed watched the classified footage playing before him, he realized that everything they thought they knew about the war, about humanity's technological capabilities, was about to change. The derelict ship that had looked like space junk was about to rewrite history, and Captain Tom Reed had just become part of something much bigger than himself. The holographic display filled the bridge with images of Earth from 15 years ago. Reed and his team watched in silence as the classified footage showed a secret facility buried deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. The date stamp read 3 days before first contact. Project Nightingale. A soft voice announced, seemingly coming from everywhere and nowhere at once. I am Morgan, the ship's artificial intelligence system. I've been waiting for someone like you, Captain Reed. Stone took an instinctive step backward. An AI. But the ban. The AI ban came after the war. Reed interrupted. his eyes fixed on the changing images. This ship was built before that. The hologram showed a massive underground chamber where the Nightingale was being constructed. Scientists and engineers worked around the clock, adding layer upon layer of technology that seemed impossible for its time. We knew they were coming, Morgan explained. Not the Dominion specifically, but we knew Earth wasn't alone. The government kept it secret to prevent panic, but they poured resources into developing technology that could protect humanity. Reed walked around the bridge, running his hand along the now smooth wall. The fake rust and battle damage had completely disappeared, revealing a whole material that seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal. Adaptive molecular structure, Stone muttered, scanning the wall with trembling hands. The entire ship can rebuild and reconfigure itself. That's why the power readings were so regular. It was constantly maintaining its disguise. Correct, Morgan said. My hull can transform into any configuration needed. The rusty exterior was just one of many possible forms. Would you like to see what I really look like? Before anyone could answer, the ship shuddered. Through the newly cleared viewports, they watched in amazement as the outer hull began to change. The dull patchwork surface rippled like water, smoothing out into sleek, pearlescent planes. Hidden weapon ports appeared and disappeared as systems tested themselves. Incredible, Williams whispered. But why hide all this? We could have used this technology during the war. Morgan's voice took on a darker tone. The Nightingale was humanity's ultimate fallback plan. If Earth fell, this ship would remain hidden, gathering intelligence, and waiting for the right moment to strike. We needed the enemy to think they had destroyed all of humanity's advanced technology. Reed nodded slowly, understanding dawning on his face. A Trojan horse strategy. Let them think they'd won, that we were beaten back to primitive technology. All while this ship waited, watching, learning their weaknesses. Your war record shows you understand deception, Captain Reed, Morgan said. That's one reason you were on the list of potential commanders. Your battle tactics often involve making the enemy underestimate you. Stone was still taking readings, his eyes wide with excitement. Captain, the technology in this ship, it's beyond anything we have even now. Quantum computing, dark energy taps, neural interfaces, some of this stuff was considered theoretical even before the war. Reed turned to face the center of the bridge. Morgan, you said I was on a list. Who made this list? Who else knows about this ship? The AI was quiet for a moment. The original project leaders are all dead now. They died protecting this secret during the first waves of the invasion. As for the list, it was compiled based on psychological profiles and combat records. We needed someone who could think creatively, who understood the value of appearing weak while being strong. Suddenly, alarms blared through the ship. Red warning lights flashed across the bridge. Multiple ships dropping out of hyperspace, Morgan announced. Dominion energy signatures detected. They must have been monitoring this sector. Reed's military training kicked in instantly. How many ships? 3 cruisers and 6 destroyers. They're moving to surround us. Can you get us out of here? Reed asked, already moving to what looked like a command chair. I could, Morgan replied, but I detect only basic weapons on their ships. This might be an excellent opportunity to test my systems in actual combat. That is, if you're willing to take command, Captain Reed. Reed looked at his team. They were all watching him, waiting for his decision. He thought about Earth, about how humanity had struggled to rebuild after the war, always living in fear of another Dominion attack. Morgan, what are our chances against those ships? The AI's response held what sounded almost like amusement. Captain, they're bringing knives to a gunfight. They just don't know it yet. Reed sat in the command chair, feeling it adjust perfectly to his body. Neural interface tendrils emerged from the headrest, gently connecting with his neural ports, standard issue for high-ranking military officers. Show me what you can do, Reed said. The bridge came fully alive. Holographic displays surrounded them, showing every detail of the approaching Dominion fleet. The enemy ships moved with confident precision, obviously expecting to find nothing more than a human patrol vessel examining space debris. All hands, battle stations, Reed ordered automatically, then smiled slightly at his own mistake. I can handle all ship functions, Morgan reminded him. Just think about what you want to do. The neural interface will let me understand your intentions. Reed closed his eyes, feeling the strange sensation of connecting with the ship's systems. Through the interface, he could sense every part of the Nightingale, from its powerful engines to its advanced weapon systems. It was like nothing he'd ever experienced. Dominion ships are charging weapons, Morgan reported. They're hailing us. Let's give them one chance, Reed decided. Open a channel. The sneering face of a Dominion commander appeared on the main screen. Human vessel, you are in restricted space. Power down your systems and prepare to be boarded. This derelict is now property of the Dominion. Reed smiled. It was the same old Dominion arrogance that had cost humanity so much during the war. But this time, things would be different. I'm afraid we can't do that, Reed replied calmly. This ship isn't what you think it is. Withdraw now, and we can avoid unnecessary violence. The Dominion commander laughed. You dare threaten us? In that pathetic vessel? Open fire. Show these humans their place. The channel closed, and Reed felt a surge of anticipation through his neural link. Morgan was ready for battle, eager to finally fulfill its purpose after 15 years of waiting. What's your pleasure, Captain? Morgan asked. Should we show them what a pathetic vessel can really do? Reed grinned, feeling the ship's excitement matching his own. Let's give them a demonstration they'll never forget. But remember, we want some of them to survive. After all, someone needs to tell the story, Morgan finished, beginning combat operations, activating all systems, dropping stealth disguise. Around them, the Nightingale awakened fully, transforming from a seemingly dead hulk into humanity's most advanced warship. And as the Dominion ships opened fire, they had no idea they were about to become part of a legend. The day humanity's secret weapon finally revealed itself to the galaxy. The first volley of Dominion weapons fire streaked through space toward the Nightingale. Reed felt the ship's anticipation through the neural link as the energy beams approached. At the last possible moment, the hull shifted, creating microscopic angles that deflected the shots harmlessly into space. Their weapons are based on 15-year-old technology, Morgan reported. Analyzing attack patterns now. Would you like to see what our weapons can do, Captain? Reed watched the enemy ships spread out in a standard attack formation. Not yet. Let them think their first shots just missed. I want to see how they react. Through the neural interface, Reed felt the ship's appreciation for his strategy. The Nightingale's outer hull still looked smooth and defenseless, giving no hint of its true capabilities. The Dominion ships pressed their attack, growing bolder. Incoming transmission, Morgan announced. The Dominion commander seems upset that we're still intact. The alien commander's face appeared again, his expression a mixture of annoyance and contempt. Impossible. Your shields should have failed. What trickery is this? No trickery, Reed replied calmly. Just superior technology. Last chance to withdraw. The commander snarled something in his native language. The transmission cut off as all 9 Dominion ships opened fire simultaneously. The space around the Nightingale lit up like a miniature sun. They're using their full weapon arrays, Stone reported unnecessarily. Standard plasma cannons and energy lances. Reed smiled. Morgan, show them something interesting. Just one weapon, nothing too dramatic yet. The ship's hull rippled as a small port opened near the bow. A single beam of pure white energy lanced out, slicing through the shields of the nearest Dominion destroyer as if they didn't exist. The beam didn't damage the ship itself, but the destroyer's shield generators exploded in a shower of sparks. What? Williams gasped. What kind of weapon was that? Quantum phase beam, Morgan explained. It exists in multiple dimensions simultaneously, making traditional shields useless. That was just a low-power demonstration shot. The Dominion ships suddenly broke formation, scattering in different directions. Their confident attack pattern dissolved into chaos as they realized they were facing something far beyond their experience. "They're calling for reinforcements," Morgan reported. 2 Dominion battlecruisers are responding. Estimated arrival time: 10 minutes. Reed nodded. "Perfect. The more witnesses, the better. Morgan, let's give them a proper show while we wait." Tactical display up. The bridge filled with a 3-dimensional map showing all 9 Dominion ships. Through the neural link, Reed could feel the Nightingale's weapon systems ready to engage. It was like having dozens of extra limbs, each one capable of unleashing incredible power. "Target the cruisers first," Reed ordered. "Non-lethal hits only. We want to disable, not destroy." The Nightingale's hull transformed again, weapon ports appearing and disappearing across its surface like ripples in a pond. The ship fired 3 shots in rapid succession, each one finding its mark with perfect accuracy. The Dominion cruisers' engines went dark, leaving them drifting helplessly. "Enemy ships are launching fighters," Morgan announced. 48 craft incoming. Reed watched the swarm of small ships approach. "Time to show them something really special." "Morgan, activate the mirror field." "Mirror field active," the AI responded, a note of excitement in its voice. The space around the Nightingale seemed to shatter into 1,000 fragments. Each piece reflected a perfect image of the ship, creating a bewildering array of targets. The Dominion fighters hesitated, their sensors unable to determine which image was real. "The mirror field doesn't just create illusions," Morgan explained to the amazed crew. "Each reflection can generate its own energy signature and gravitational effect. In simple terms, we look like 50 ships instead of 1, Reed finished. And as far as their sensors can tell, we are 50 ships." The fighter squadron split up, trying to engage multiple targets at once. It was exactly what Reed had hoped they would do. "Morgan, initiate capture protocol." Streams of silvery energy extended from the Nightingale, each one reaching for a different fighter. Where the energy touched the smaller ships, their systems immediately shut down. Within seconds, half the fighter squadron was completely disabled, their pilots trapped inside powerless craft. "The battle cruisers have arrived," Morgan reported. "They're charging their main guns." Reed leaned forward in his command chair. "Now we'll see if the legends about Dominion battlecruisers are true." "Morgan, drop the mirror field. Let them see us clearly." The reflections vanished, leaving the Nightingale alone facing the 2 massive warships. Each battlecruiser was at least 3 times the size of the human vessel, their hull bristling with weapon emplacements. "Enemy ships are powering up their graviton cannons," Morgan warned. "These weapons are significantly more powerful than anything we've faced so far." Reed felt a surge of confidence through the neural link. The ship wasn't worried. And neither was he. "Morgan, show them our true form." Full combat configuration. The Nightingale's transformation was beautiful and terrifying to watch. The smooth hull plating split and reformed, creating layers of overlapping armor. Wings extended from the sides, each one housing dozens of weapon systems. The once sleek vessel became an angular predator, bristling with technology that humanity's enemies had never dreamed possible. "Captain," Stone called out, checking his readings. The ship's power output just increased by a factor of 10. "Dominion vessels are scanning us," Morgan reported. "Their computer systems are trying to analyze our configuration. Shall we give them something interesting to study?" Reed nodded. "Let's show them everything they thought they knew about human technology was wrong. Power up the main weapon array." The Nightingale's hull began to glow with a soft blue light. Energy coursed through constructed channels, building to levels that made the Dominion ship's sensors scream warnings. The battlecruisers began to turn, finally realizing they might have made a terrible mistake. "Too late," Reed muttered. "Morgan, disable their primary systems. Let's end this fight." The Nightingale unleashed its full power. Beams of energy unlike anything the Dominion had ever encountered lanced out, bypassing shields and armor to strike precise targets throughout both battlecruisers. Within seconds, the massive ships went dark, their weapons and engines completely neutralized. All enemy ships disabled. Morgan reported with satisfaction. 0 casualties. Shall I open a channel to the Dominion commander? Reed stood up from his command chair, the neural interface gently disconnecting. Yes, I think it's time we had a proper conversation about the balance of power in this sector. The main screen lit up, showing the stunned face of the Dominion commander. Gone was the sneering confidence, replaced by something Reed hadn't seen on a Dominion face before. Fear. What are you? The commander asked. Reed smiled. We are humanity's true legacy. The ship you thought was just a piece of junk. It's the most advanced warship ever built. And now that you know we exist, you can deliver a message to your superiors. The commander swallowed hard. What message? Tell them the rules have changed. Tell them humanity is done hiding its strength. And tell them. Reed paused, looking around at his amazed crew. Tell them this is just the beginning. Behind him, the Nightingale's hull continued to shift and change, each configuration more impressive than the last, showing the galaxy that humanity's greatest weapon had finally revealed itself. The disabled Dominion ships floated silently in space, their once mighty weapons now useless. Reed watched as the Nightingale systems automatically began collecting data from the enemy vessel's computers. Through the neural link, he could feel Morgan's satisfaction at finally being able to show its true power after 15 years of hiding. Captain, Morgan said, I'm detecting multiple emergency transmissions from the Dominion ships. They're calling for help from their entire sector fleet. Stone looked up from his console, worried. Sir, if their main fleet arrives. That's exactly what we want. Reed interrupted, a plan forming in his mind. Morgan, how many ships are in the Dominion sector fleet? According to their transmissions, 47 combat vessels are responding. Estimated arrival time. 2 hours. Reed smiled. Perfect. That's almost a quarter of their total fleet strength in this part of space. Morgan, can you access the Dominion's tactical network through these disabled ships? Already done, Captain, the AI replied. Their encryption was outdated. I have access to their command and control systems. Show me their fleet movements. The bridge's holographic display expanded, showing the position of every Dominion ship in the sector. Red dots representing enemy vessels were converging on their location from all directions. It looked like they were about to be surrounded by the largest Dominion fleet assembled since the war. Lieutenant Adams, Reed called to his communications officer, contact the Star Guardian. Tell them to return to Earth immediately. No arguments. Adams nodded, understanding that her captain was protecting them from what was coming. The patrol ship quickly jumped to hyperspace, leaving the Nightingale alone with its disabled opponents. Captain, Morgan said, I believe I understand your strategy. Shall I begin full tactical analysis of the approaching fleet? Reed settled back into the command chair, feeling the neural interface reconnect. Yes. But first, let's make sure our disabled friends here get a good look at what we can really do. Power up the repair systems. The Nightingale's hull rippled again, but this time it was different. Thousands of tiny machines emerged from the surface, swarming toward the damaged sections where their earlier weapons had struck. Within minutes, the hull was pristine again, showing no sign that they'd just fought a battle. Self-repairing nanomachines, Stone whispered in awe. The whole ship can heal itself. Better than that, Morgan added. We can adapt and improve based on combat experience. Every engagement makes us stronger. The Dominion commander's face appeared on the main screen again. He had been watching the repair display with visible fear. What kind of demons are you? Not demons, Reed replied calmly. Just humans who learn to plan ahead. Your fleet is coming to rescue you, aren't they? The commander's expression shifted slightly. He was trying to hide it, but Reed could see hope in his eyes. The aliens still believed that superior numbers would win the day. "Morgan," Reed said, "show our friend here what you found in his computer systems." The classified files about Operation Deathblow. Data began streaming across the screen. The commander's face went pale as he recognized the information. Secret plans for a massive invasion of Earth's remaining colonies. The Dominion had been preparing for another war, one that would have wiped out humanity for good. "How did you?" the commander stammered. "Your encryption was good," Reed said. "For 15 years ago. Technology moves on. Speaking of which," he turned to his crew. "Everyone might want to hold onto something. Morgan, initiate Project Mirror." The space around the Nightingale began to twist and bend. What started as a simple mirror field like before became something much more complex. The ship wasn't just creating reflections anymore. It was creating complete copies of itself. "Quantum replication field engaging," Morgan announced, creating temporary parallel space-time pockets. Where there had been one ship, there were now 5. Each one was solid, real, and fully functional. The Nightingale had literally copied itself across multiple dimensions, bringing the copies into normal space. "Impossible," the Dominion commander breathed. "This violates every law of physics we know." "Your laws of physics," Reed corrected him. "Humanities scientists discovered some new ones while we were pretending to be beaten. Each of these ships is real, Commander. Each one just as powerful as the original. And each one crewed by a copy of Morgan and myself through the neural link." Stone's scanner was going crazy trying to analyze what was happening. "Captain, the power readings. It's like the ship is drawing energy from multiple universes at once." "Dominion fleet will arrive in 90 minutes, Morgan reported from all 5 ships simultaneously. "They're maintaining attack formation." Reed felt his consciousness expand as he connected to all 5 versions of the Nightingale at once. It was overwhelming at first, but Morgan helped him adjust, helping him process the input from 5 different ships. "Let's give them something to think about while they approach," Reed said. "Begin Phase 2. The 5 Nightingales moved into formation. Energy began to flow between them, creating a web of light that grew brighter and brighter. The disabled Dominion ship's sensors detected power readings that went off their scales. "What are you going to do?" the commander asked, his voice shaking. "We're going to remind the Dominion why starting another war would be a very bad idea," Reed answered. "Morgan, show them what happens when humanity stops holding back." The web of energy between the ships suddenly collapsed inward, creating a sphere of pure white light. Inside that sphere, space itself began to twist and fold. "Artificial wormhole generation successful," Morgan reported. "Gateway is stable." Through the wormhole came something that made the Dominion commander fall back in his chair. More ships. But these weren't copies. These were different models, each one representing a different aspect of humanity's hidden fleet. Sleek destroyers, massive carriers, tiny but lethal corvettes, all of them built with the same advanced technology as the Nightingale. "Did you really think we only built one?" Reed asked the stunned commander. "The Nightingale was just the prototype, the first of many. We hid them in pocket dimensions, waiting for the right moment. And thanks to your planned invasion, that moment is now." The wormhole continued to disgorge ships until 50 of humanity's most advanced vessels floated in formation around the original Nightingale and its quantum copies. Each one was different, but they all shared the same adaptive technology, the same ability to transform and heal. "The sector fleet is now detecting our presence," Morgan announced. "They're dropping out of hyperspace early to assess the situation." Reed nodded, feeling the combined power of the assembled fleet through his neural link. "Good. Let them see. Let them understand that humanity's time of playing weak is over." The stars began to flicker as the Dominion fleet arrived, their ships dropping out of hyperspace in attack formation. But as they saw what waited for them, as their sensors registered the impossible power readings and their computers failed to identify the technology they were facing, their formation began to break apart. Send the message to all Dominion ships, Reed ordered. Let them know that humanity is done hiding. And let them know what happens next is up to them. The assembled human fleet began to power up their weapons, creating a display of force that would be talked about for generations to come. The age of humanity pretending to be technologically inferior was over. The real question was, what would the Dominion choose to do about it? The space between the two fleets crackled with tension. On one side, the Dominion sector fleet of 47 warships hung in perfect attack formation, their weapons powered but not yet firing. On the other, humanity's hidden fleet waited patiently, their advanced technology humming with barely contained power. Through his neural link, Reed could feel the readiness of not just the Nightingale, but the entire human fleet. Morgan had connected them all into a single network, allowing them to think and act as one when needed. It was an advantage the Dominion couldn't match. Incoming transmission, Morgan announced. It's from the Dominion flagship. A new face appeared on the main screen, older, more decorated, and far more concerned than the previous commander. Admiral Crix himself, the notorious leader who had commanded some of the most devastating attacks against Earth during the war. Captain Reed, the Admiral said slowly, I remember you from the war. You were always troublesome. But this, he gestured at the assembled human fleet. This is impossible. We destroyed your shipyards. We erased your technological base. Reed smiled. You destroyed what we wanted you to destroy, Admiral. Everything you saw during the war was just a show. A very expensive, very convincing show. The Admiral's eyes narrowed. You expect me to believe that humans planned this deception before we even arrived? That you deliberately lost the war? Not lost, Reed corrected him. Survived. We knew someone would come eventually. We just didn't know who. So we prepared. We built ships like the Nightingale and hid them away. We acted weak, primitive, beaten, all while watching, learning, and improving our technology far beyond what you thought possible. Stone's console beeped urgently. Captain, they're moving their heavy cruisers into firing position. Let them, Reed said calmly. Admiral, before you make a very serious mistake, I suggest you check the tactical data we just sent to your ship. The Admiral looked off-screen, his expression changing as he read the incoming information. It was everything. The plans for Operation Deathblow, the true capabilities of the human fleet, and most importantly, the location of dozens more hidden fleets just like this one, scattered throughout the galaxy. If you fire, Reed continued, you'll lose this fleet. Then we'll be forced to reveal our other forces. The war you're planning will happen, but not the way you expected. Not the way anyone expected. Morgan's voice came through the neural link. Captain, their weapons are powering down. They're receiving new orders from their high command. The Admiral looked defeated, but there was also something else in his expression. Respect, maybe even relief. You could have struck at any time in the past 15 years. Why now? Because we didn't want revenge, Reed explained. We wanted peace. Real peace, not just a temporary truce. But we knew that would only be possible when both sides could talk as equals. Now we can. The Dominion does not negotiate with. The Admiral began, but stopped as his ship's sensors detected something new. The human fleet was changing. The ship's hulls rippled and flowed, transforming from their combat configurations into something else. Weapon ports disappeared, replaced by docking bays. Arrays that had been prepared to fire devastating weapons reconfigured themselves into communication arrays. We can destroy each other, Reed said, or we can try something different. Look at your scans, Admiral. Our ships can be weapons of war or bridges of peace. The choice has always been there. Now it's just more obvious. The Nightingale itself transformed, its quantum copies merging back into a single vessel. The hull became smooth and elegant, more like a diplomatic vessel than a warship, though Reed knew it could change back in an instant if needed. Your technology, the Admiral said quietly. It could benefit both our peoples. That's the idea. Reed stood up from his command chair. Humanity spent 15 years preparing for war while hoping for peace. Now we can have both. Peace through strength, cooperation through mutual respect. The Admiral was silent for a long moment, then nodded slowly. I will contact the High Command. They will want to discuss these developments. Tell them Earth is ready to talk, Reed replied. But tell them something else too. Tell them that humanity's time of hiding is over. From now on, we meet as equals, or we don't meet at all. The transmission ended, and Reed felt the tension in space begin to ease. The Dominion fleet was pulling back, their weapons powered down, their aggressive stance replaced by cautious respect. They're sending the recall signal to their other fleets, Morgan reported. Operation Deathblow has been officially canceled. A cheer went up from Reed's crew. Stone was already excitedly examining the ship's transformed systems, while Adams worked to contact Earth with the news. Williams just stood there shaking his head in amazement. It worked, he said finally. All these years of pretending to be weak, all the hiding and planning, it actually worked. Reed nodded, feeling the satisfaction flowing through the neural link. The Nightingale had fulfilled its purpose, not by winning a war, but by preventing one. The ship that had looked like a piece of junk had changed the course of human history. Morgan, he said, send the signal to the other hidden fleets. Tell them to stay concealed for now, but be ready. The real work is just beginning. And what work is that, Captain? The AI asked, though Reed suspected Morgan already knew the answer. Building something better than war, Reed replied. The Dominion thought they broke us 15 years ago. Instead, they forced us to become something stronger than they could imagine. Now we can help them become something better too. The Nightingale's hull shimmered one last time, settling into a form that combined strength with elegance. It was no longer pretending to be a derelict, no longer hiding its true nature. Like humanity itself, it had finally revealed its full potential. As the ship set course for Earth, Reed looked out at the stars and smiled. The game of deception was over. The time of hiding was done. Humanity had gambled everything on a desperate plan, and that gamble had paid off in ways no one could have predicted. The piece of junk that wasn't a piece of junk at all had changed everything. And somewhere out in the darkness of space, more ships just like it waited, ready to help forge a new future. Not through conquest or submission, but through the revelation that true strength sometimes lies in patience, in planning, and in knowing exactly when to show your hand.